Loki is bad. Season 1, Episode 3, I don't know what it is with these Disney Plus shows, but each of them just gets more boring than the previous. I don't understand how you can take a character like Loki, who is genuinely a very charismatic character, exciting, he's got lots of cool moments, and you make his show one of the most boring things that I've seen in a very long time. I mean, yeah, there are other shows that are really awful out there, but at least stuff is happening in them. In this show, nothing happens. It's just complete boredom. There is nothing going on. I'm not exaggerating. The entire 37 minutes of this episode, absolutely nothing of any significance occurred during the entire thing. I've mentioned it before, how Disney likes to pad out these episodes to increase the length of the total series, but this one takes it to another level because the entire episode is nothing but filler. Granted, they still managed to find time to cram in some woke garbage, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but the episode begins with the diversity hire attacking the TVA. She tries to use her magic, but it fails because the TVA protections, so instead she proceeds to very easily beat up and disintegrate numerous TVA guards. Let's take a quick look and compare how Loki dealt with the TVA guards in his first battle versus the diversity hire dealing with the TVA. I mean, of course, the male version of Loki is going to be utterly helpless against a single strong female character from the TVA. Meanwhile, the diversity hire Loki is able to defeat numerous men from the TVA all at the same time with absolutely no effort whatsoever. It's so obvious what they're doing, and it's really dumb. Disney's willingness to destroy their own characters in order to pander to woke weirdos is honestly pretty astonishing. Loki catches up and fights a little bit with the diversity hire, but of course she gets the better of him, and then Rachel shows up to remind us that she's still unlikable and annoying, and then Loki uses a TVA tablet which allows him and the diversity hire to escape. The tablet that Loki used belonged to the diversity hire, and she had set it up to automatically go to different apocalyptic events so she could go and escape there whenever she needed to. Unfortunately, Loki ends up sending them to one of the worst possible events. It's a moon that's about to collide with a planet, and everything's gonna get destroyed. Also, there are very few resources, and if you get stuck there, you're just gonna be in a lot of trouble because getting off the planet and actually escaping without the tablet is going to be incredibly difficult. And what do you know? It turns out that the tablet has no energy, so they can't escape.
Oh no.
Now, we know that these tablets can be used quite a few times before they would ever run out of charge, so why would the diversity hire let it get to the point where it's basically empty before her final plan to go and attack the TVA? That makes absolutely no sense. She's dumb, and so are the writers. Speaking of dumb writers, something that I thought of after the last episode was the very existence of the diversity hire Loki to begin with. It should have never happened.
Let's go over this step by step.
Think about it for a second. If the TVA is willing to annihilate an entire timeline universe because one person was 10 minutes late for work, for what possible reason would they have allowed the diversity hire to ever even exist in the first place? The very moment that she was conceived with whatever the frost giant equivalent is of XX chromosomes to determine that she would be a woman, the TVA should have immediately arrived and disintegrated that entire timeline. It simply makes no sense whatsoever that she would have ever even be allowed to exist. But in this series, it's been made very clear that if there's one thing more important than the sacred timeline, it's diversity checkboxes.
Did you want me to weep with joy? It's terrible!
The two of them reluctantly decide to work together in order to escape before everything gets destroyed, but in order to do that, they need to find something powerful enough to recharge the tablet. We also learn that the diversity hire no longer goes by the name of Loki, but instead wants to be called Sylvie.
It doesn't matter what her name was!
This is a character from the comic books, but it looks like they're changing a lot of stuff about her. Short version is this. In the comics, Loki used his magic to create a character named Sylvie and then gave her magic powers. At one point, she does go by the name Enchantress, but she is not the original Enchantress. She only takes the name after the original one died, but then in comic book fashion, the original one comes back and banishes Sylvie to some other dimension. I'm not sure if it's ever revealed why Loki created her, and honestly, I don't care because modern comics are garbage. But the fact of the matter is that Sylvie is not an alternate version of Loki in the comics. She's not even an Asgardian or even a Frost Giant. She was literally created from magic by Loki to serve some unknown purpose.
Nobody cares.
Obviously, the show is changing all that, and we're now 13 minutes into the episode, and nearly all of it has been nothing more than Loki and the diversity hire bickering with each other while walking around. But don't worry, it gets worse. They arrive at an old woman's home where they spend a full 3 minutes of the episode asking for directions. There are several jokes that just fall completely flat, and in the end they get information that they need to go and find a train. This entire 3-minute scene could have been cut out and it would have changed absolutely nothing. There's no reason why they needed to go and talk to this old lady and do all that stupid stuff. The diversity hire already knows everything that's happening on this planet or the moon or whatever. She already knows what's happening, that they need to get to the train and that they need to get to the Ark or some other power source or something, so they had no reason to go and talk to this lady. It was just dumb and added into the episode. The two of them were already wandering around. They could have just simply arrived at the train station and realized that they needed to get on the train.
Get over there!
When they finally arrive at the train, Loki uses his magic to disguise himself, and the diversity hire enchants one of the guards, and they trick their way onto the train. They then find a seat and spend the next several minutes talking about basically nothing. Loki mentions his mother taught him magic, and the diversity hire says that she didn't need anyone to teach her because she taught herself.
Obi, when it fits a woman.
Are you fucking serious? This shit is so dumb. It is unbelievably dumb. Of course, the man needs to be taught magic by his mother, by a woman, but the female character can just teach herself, like she somehow just figures out all this stuff and learns how to do all this incredibly complicated magic stuff. This is just Rey Palpatine all over again. The no-talent woke writers do the same stupid garbage every single time, and it is so mind-numbingly transparent and just bad. But don't worry, it gets worse, because as it turns out, the entire point of this incredibly long, bloated 10-minute, dragged-out conversation is for the show to somehow suggest that Loki isn't straight.
What's the matter with you? I look gay to you?
The pandering is endless and also really fucking absurd. Ignore for the moment that this is entirely antithetical to the character that's already been established and that it completely breaks canon for Loki in the MCU. This dumbass show wasted about 10 minutes just to suggest that Loki isn't straight. Something that no one will care about except for the weirdos that spend 20 hours a day on Twitter.
Why is lesbian part of her job title?
Who needs a good story, interesting dialogue, or consistent character building? The most important thing is that those diversity boxes get checked off. And just to clarify, regardless of whatever this show tries to say, Loki is in fact straight, and no amount of pandering, retcons, or hashtag YasQueens on Twitter is ever going to change that. Deal with it. This is followed by over a full minute of Loki singing while he's drunk. Why? Who knows? Apparently they gotta extend that episode length a little bit more. But shortly after, some of the crew from the train realize that Loki and the diversity hire shouldn't be on it, and they come by and ask for tickets. Of course, Loki doesn't have them, so they end up getting into a fight. Now, remember that Loki and the diversity hire have super strength and magic, and they would be more than a match for pretty much everybody on the train at the same time, and yet they lose to a bunch of nobodies who are doing part-time security on a train. How is any of this supposed to happen? How is it in any way believable? Sure, Loki has proven himself to be a complete and utter buffoon this entire series, and I expect them to continue doing that, but this doesn't excuse the fact that the diversity hire also loses the fight.
I am the strongest woman this state has ever seen.
Think about this for a second. The show has been building up this diversity hire as being the vastly superior version of Loki, and she has set up dozens of ambushes for the TVA, where she not only defeats, but also kills numerous highly trained TVA agents. She then single-handedly invades the TVA headquarters and easily defeats many of those same highly trained TVA guards by herself with no effort whatsoever, and yet we're supposed to believe that a part-time security guard on a train is able to defeat her. How are the writers this incompetent? You've spent the entire series up until this point showing us and telling us that this character is amazingly, unbelievably powerful and undefeatable, and yet she's getting beaten by a part-time security guard because you can't figure out a better way to get the characters off the train.
Your story was supposed to be awful and stupid. I just failed to predict how well that would mesh with the theme.
Loki gets thrown out the window because he's a useless buffoon, and then the diversity hire goes out after him because Loki still has the tablet. Unfortunately, though, the tablet gets broken when Loki falls out the window, and now they need to find another way to escape. Lucky for us, we get another 10 minutes of absolute agonizing, boring nonsense. Both of them very slowly walk towards the city that is a way off in the distance. Remember, there's a time limit here when the entire place is going to be destroyed. I think it was like 12 hours or so it was initially stated. Who knows how much time has actually passed now with them being on the train and all that sort of stuff. But regardless, they probably should be in a hurry in order to get to the city before, you know, everything is destroyed. But these two morons are out here just taking a casual stroll through the apocalypse. We are now 31 minutes into a 37-minute episode, and we finally get a single piece of story that is worth knowing. And that is that everyone working at the TVA is a variant. They were all living normal lives until something happened that caused a branching timeline, and then those people get taken to the TVA headquarters, where presumably they have their minds wiped, and then they're told to start working there. So that's the big thing that we learned in this episode. That is literally the only thing of any importance in this entire episode. They finally arrive at the city, and the plan is to get on the ship as quickly as possible, because what happened in the normal history is that the ship gets destroyed before it's able to take off. So they need to hurry and get on the ship and then take it over so that they can fly away quickly and escape before any of that actually happens. So the two of them begin running around through the streets in seemingly random directions instead of going directly to the ship. But then they finally make it a little bit closer to the ship, and it ends up getting hit by a rock and destroyed, so they can't escape. They're now trapped on the planet. Loki looks sad, and that was the end of the episode. Honestly, for most of this, I'd have to say that the 15-minute boat montage that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier had looked like an action-packed adventure compared to the boring snooze fest that is the Loki show. I am amazed that Disney managed to find some of the most untalented writers imaginable, who were able to take a show about Loki and make it more boring than watching paint dry. Congratulations. That's the end of episode 3.